Hi everyone, it's Miss Lexi here, the occupational therapist over at Tri-City United Schools. And today I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about pre-writing expectations for your child and just kind of go through the different skills that they will develop as they grow and get more exposure to these tasks. So I have a little sign behind me, some really quick basics. 3 years old, they should be doing some very simple lines. Vertical, horizontal, and circular lines are what they should be working on kind of at that 3-year mark. As they progress to 4 years old, we want to be working on getting that cross shape down. So one smooth movement down and one smooth movement across. Some students will struggle and they will kind of piece this together. And that's not what we're looking for. We really want just a 2-line formation there. By the time they're around 5 years old, we want to be looking on those vertical lines, slanting down or slanting up. Try to encourage proper kind of left to right formation. That will just help develop skills that will relate to handwriting down the line. They also want to be working on forming simple squares at that point. And then towards 5.5 years old, we want to be looking at forming X's. Again, that's crossing midline, which can be tricky for some kids. And just like this cross up here with the X, we want to form it into simple lines. And then the triangle also helps with those different slant lines that are needed for certain letters of the alphabet, such as A, which tend to be a little bit trickier. As you're working on these, know that these aren't exact ages and all kids differ. If your kid has occupational therapy services, it might be in part because they struggle with some of these skills. There's a lot that goes into it, including visual motor and fine motor skills that all relate to this. So, use this as a guide, but know that it's not 100% accurate, and don't worry too much about that. I'm going to plug in my document camera here. So again, going back at around that 1 to 2 years age. So we're going to start even before my sign. At around 1 to 2 years, your child should start to kind of randomly scribble. So if you hand them some paper and a writing utensil, we want to see that they're, picking up that pencil and doing some sort of marking on the paper. It might not be anything specific, just kind of, like I said, random scribbles. Those scribbles will then start to develop into some more consistent scribbling, which sounds confusing, but by that I mean that they will tend to scribble more in a similar pattern. So, vertical lines back and forth, or the horizontal up and down strokes, or you'll start to see actual like circular scribbling come about instead of just that very basic pointless scribbles as they start to explore that. So after that scribble starts to develop, what you should see is that they will start to actually imitate. So if you're picking up and you're scribbling like this, you want them to also start to imitate that movement. One thing we talk about a lot is imitation versus copying. So imitation is just them trying. Copy, when they start to actually copy a movement, it is more of a specific and purposeful copy. But imitation is just them seeing you do something and wanting to try that as well. So that is 1 to 2 years. At 2 to 3 years is when we really start to see imitation of specific lines. So again, you want to start encouraging them, hey, look at, I did this line, can you do it too? And you want to do that with vertical, horizontal, and circular lines, as I said. Again, your child's not going to do a perfect circle at 2 years old, but just encouraging them to try, have them trace, have them imitate, that sort of thing. Moving on to 3 and 4, in that time when your child is 3, you want them to be working on more of the copying skills. So instead of, you doing this and them imitating with one of these, you want to see more of a specific copy. It's not going to be the same length. It's not going to be perfect, but you want to see those skills improving and you want to see their line looking more like your lines. And that can be said for the horizontal, vertical, and circular lines. You also want to start seeing then imitation of the cross and the horizontal lines, as well as the square. In this 3 to 4 year old time, again, they're not going to be necessarily copying at this point, but imitating. So they might be copying these lines, but imitating So they'll be copying these lines, imitating these lines. As that progresses on to 4 and 5 years, you will see them copying more of these lines. So by 4 to 5 years, you should see them copying horizontal, vertical, circular lines, as well as copying the cross, the slant lines, square. Then they'll start to imitate. So again, this is copy. They'll start to imitate triangle and an X here. At around 4 to 5 years old, too, you really want to focus on how your child is holding their pencil. I have another video all about pencil grip, but by 5 years old, they should really be holding their pencil in the proper pencil writing dynamic tripod grasp position, which is the pointer and thumb with the middle supporting it. And then again, so 5 years old is when they will really get down the copying skills for that X and that triangle. And these are tricky ones because they don't necessarily know what point to start these things. These relate a lot to letters. The X is obviously X, or even some of those letters that have lots of slant lines in them. Those relate well too. So these are really just some basic foundational skills that you want your child to really get proficient with in order to progress towards handwriting skills. If your student or child is struggling to do some of these earlier skills, it's going to be really hard for them to progress to handwriting. One thing we talk about with handwriting is that we want them to learn to make the letters, not trace the letters or draw the letters. You want them to really form the letters with proper formation. Sometimes we'll see students who, yes, they can make the letter A, but instead of the simple formation like we are taught, maybe they are going up and then they're over and then they're trying to connect them here, or they're doing one line down and then this line is over, that kind of thing. So we just really want them to get these basic foundational skills so that their letters can be formed correctly instead of kind of drawn and put together randomly. If you have any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, take it at your own pace and progress your child as you see fit through these lines. And really just the more, especially in these distance learning times when we are working on computers, through screens, that sort of thing, please just make sure to give your child the opportunity to write and color and draw and really put pencil to paper or crayons to paper and just get that exposure. Thanks, guys.